Not a single hint, I repeated. I hate her, he suddenly muttered. No, no, do not do this, Ben. She loves you. You can be sure of that. It's something else. Something I do not understand. Maybe she doesn't either. But do not let your anger consume you. I know you love her. Perhaps in time you can forgive her. I know she would never want to hurt you or Angie. Never, I said in as positive a tone as possible. He turned to me again with a devastated look. I put my hand on his shoulder to reassure him. After a few minutes, I got up and left his room, closing the door behind me. After I woke up Sunday morning, all heck broke loose. Sheila tried to call home, but I got Angie and Ben, and we headed out for breakfast. We may not have had much of an appetite, but we needed to get out of the house. I also turned off my phone and asked Angie to do the same with hers. I didn't want Sheila pissing her off over nothing. I told the kids what I had done by calling early in the morning, and Angie laughed, then smiled, and I realized they approved. Why didn't I feel better then? After breakfast, we drove to the park by the river, and the three of us went for a walk. I think in some strange way, we all felt better. Perhaps because all the tension and anticipation of what was to come had subsided. Angie and Ben knew what was going to happen next, and they knew when it was going to happen. I myself had a knot in my stomach that would not dissolve. I was beginning the process that would end with the dissolution of my marriage and the breakup of my family. I still had to talk to my parents, but that was one of the two important things to do today. Of course, I would also call Lydia and tell her what I had done. I dreaded talking to George and Amy Pratt, Sheila's parents. We were close, and they adored their grandchildren. I wasn't sure how they would take the news, or which side they would take. I decided to leave it at that until Sheila could decide for herself. She needed a place to live, and I suspected she would run home. I called Lydia Pancreas first. I told her about my little stunt, and she too laughed at my recklessness. Now that's something I'd never want to get. She grinned. I hope you enjoyed yourself, Mick. Not really. Cheap revenge, I guess. But now she knows, and she knows some of the consequences, I said, noticing the note of anger in my voice. How about the kids, Mick? I spoke to them last night, and I think things are stable. They're not very happy, as you can imagine, but they understand everything, and I think we'll have to wait and see what the long-term effects are for them. I said, but I have another surprise. What? Lydia was confused for a moment. Angie told me that about 4 years ago. Her mother with another man. Sheila threatened Angie. She told her that I would divorce her, she would get custody, and they would never see me again. She blackmailed her into keeping quiet. I concluded, by God, could she have done that? Asked Lydia in amazement. I thought I knew her. I was wrong. I do not know her at all. She's just a disgusting woman. I said more with regret than anger. Lydia must have been wondering what to do next. After a few minutes of silence, she spoke again. Stay close to Angie and Ben. Mick, they need you to be there for them. It's going to be heck for them for a while. Be there for them, she concluded. Thanks again for your help, Lydia. As soon as I know where Sheila ends up, I'll let you know, and you can serve her. We signed, and I slammed my cell phone shut. It would be much harder to reach my parents. The conversation with my parents was mercifully short. I described the situation, and their first reaction was concern for Angie and Ben. I recounted my conversations with them last night, and how they seemed to be fine today. This seemed to reassure my mom, and both said they would talk to us later when things had settled down. I wondered when that would happen myself. I turned the phone off again. It beeped, saying it was waiting for a call, and I was pretty sure it was Sheila. She wasn't on my list to talk to today. Angie, Ben, and I sat down on a picnic bench in the park, and I explained that I didn't want to be near our house for the next few hours. I expected their mother to rush home to try to get in. Finding that her key was useless, she would surely make a ruckus. I suggested we go out of town and stay there until a late dinner and then come back. They agreed, and we talked about where we could go. There was an open air affair in a small town a few miles south, and we decided to see what it was all about. The fair was very interesting and fun. We ate a few hot dogs to get us through dinner, and overall enjoyed an old fashioned country fair. It took our minds off our problems and allowed us to think about something else. We didn't get back into town until almost 7 and stopped at a nice restaurant for dinner. We knew that sooner or later we would have to face changes in our lives. But on this last day, we could get away from it all and find some peace and quiet. When we got home, it was almost 9. Sheila was nowhere to be seen, and the house was dark. I parked the car in the garage and we went inside, turning on the lights as we went. Nothing had changed in the house since we'd left for breakfast that morning. The children went to their room and got ready for bed. I turned on the TV, but there was nothing interesting on, so I went to bed too. It was a restless night for me. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I knew that my phone call and serving the divorce papers would have consequences. It was only a matter of time. I reconnected the phones when I got up Monday morning. I didn't expect to hear from Sheila so early. I was wrong. Almost immediately, the phone rang. We didn't have caller ID, so I had no idea who would be calling this early. I decided to tempt fate. Hello. It was a cautious greeting on my part. Meek. Mick, please. We need to talk. I was Sheila. Of course. What is there to talk about? I asked in a low voice, trying not to disturb the children. My God, Mick. I'll tell you what I can explain. It's not what you think. She moaned. That's the second time you've said that. What do you think? I think I challenged. It wasn't like a novel. It was just a stupid mistake. Do not ruin our marriage over a stupid mistake. She pleaded. You must think I'm the stupidest person on the planet, Sheila. I know for a fact that you've been having fun with Butthole Gilson for a year, no less. And now I know that Francis Morissette is one of your buddies. We got pictures and all the proof we need. It won't be pretty, Sheila, and you have no one to blame but yourself. I promise you it will be ugly. With those words, I hung up and disconnected the phone again. I came to work and informed Larry Coleman that I was divorcing my wife, and if she called, I would ask him not to transfer the call. He agreed and immediately went to Gloria's switchboard to inform her of our request. I went back to my office and tried to burrow into the papers on my desk. Everything was going well until about 11 in the morning when the phone rang. It was George Pratt, my father-in-law. Good morning, George. I can guess why you're calling. I apologize for not warning you and Amy in advance, I said preemptively. I think I understand, but I'd like to hear it from you, Mick. You've always been straight with me. So tell me what the heck happened, he asked reproachfully. I recounted my warnings to Sheila about Gilson, what I had learned about her affair with him, and her other connection with Morissette. When I finished with a condensed version of her activities, there was a long silence on the line. My God, he finally said, slowly and softly. I had no idea she was capable of such a thing. Are you absolutely sure about that, Mick? He asked, hoping there was a glimmer of relief in his words. I'm very sorry, George. I'm afraid I'm not only sure, but I have photographic evidence. I said, feeling sorry for this fine man. He deserved better from his daughter. She's staying here for now. Mick, do you plan to start divorce proceedings? Yes. All the paperwork is ready. She'll be delivered either to work or... Well, I'm sorry, but it can happen at your house. I apologized. I understand. I do not mind telling you that this will hurt not only her, but her mother as well. I know it's not your fault, but, well, it doesn't matter. I hope we'll still enjoy visiting the grandchildren. Mick, he finished. Hopefully. Of course it is. This isn't about you or Amy, George. I would never do that to you or the kids. You're always welcome here, I said sincerely. Thanks, Mick. I'm sorry. What thanks? He said sadly and hung up when I put the phone back on the stand. I was emotionally drained. I expected there would be more moments like this in the weeks and months to come. I had to prepare for them. I learned that Sheila had gone to work that morning and, amazingly enough, had not yet lost her job. Gilson had no idea that all of this would come crashing down on his head at some point, and apparently decided to let things run their course. When Lydia confirmed that my wife was on time for work, she sent a bailiff over to her. And no sooner had she had her morning coffee than the divorce papers were in her hands. According to observers, she immediately broke down and ran out of the building. I believe she ran to her parents' house, but that wasn't the most interesting part. Shortly thereafter, Terry Gilson and Knox Gilson were served with court orders stating my intention to sue for damages based on alienation of affection and willful disregard for corporate responsibility, namely, failure to comply with the morals clause in specific employee contracts. The claims included punitive and compensatory damages in the amount of $5 million. Let the circus begin reconstructing the story. Much later, I learned that Knox Gilson had a showdown with his son Terry and practically cut him off no more. Easy jobs, no more rescue from situations with angry husbands. And if he didn't pull himself together, no more inheritance. Knox had indulged his son for the past 20 plus years and was finally at the end of his tether. Sooner or later, the sprouting teenager had to get back on his feet. Terry did the completely predictable thing. He went out and got drunk. Since he had been kicked out of the dealership, he had nowhere to go but to his townhouse. He disappeared into this cave for days. I knew the wheels of justice would turn slowly, foolishly. Sheila had decided to contest the divorce until Lydia provided her lawyer with the evidence we had, including photographs. That was enough to beat the heck out of her. Lydia would do her best to limit the amount of my financial punishment. But worst case scenario, she would get half of everything, a reward for her perfidy. The week passed agonizingly slowly. I went to work, but I couldn't pretend to be efficient. Larry was very understanding and patient, but I knew this couldn't go on forever. I needed to think about my future as a single man and a single parent. It was a frightening prospect. I was mowing the lawn in my backyard when I heard a commotion in the driveway. A car door slammed, and a few seconds later, I heard someone pounding on my front door. Neither Angie nor Ben was home, so I walked around the side of the house and ran head-on into Terry Gilson. He looked like he'd been dragged behind a farm tractor for several miles. He was a mess, but at one look at his face, I knew it wasn't good. That was the last thing I remembered before he hit me with his big right fist. The next thing I remember was waking up in the hospital. I didn't really wake up, but I started to experience small bouts of unconsciousness. I was lying on my back and felt a numbing pain from my head to my groin. Apparently, it took me over 24 hours to finally regain consciousness. I was floating in and out of consciousness, barely catching bits and pieces of the here and now. At some point, I realized that someone was next to me. I felt a hand, but I couldn't open my eyes. Or at least, I didn't want to. They were like two marbles rolling around in the bottom of a tin can. I heard a strange voice, but although it was familiar, I couldn't connect it to my memories to see who it could have been. I tried to remember what could have brought me to this place, and after a while, I remembered Gilson's face and then his fist. A day or so later, I found that my mom and Angie were at my bedside almost the entire time I was in the NICU. I tried to smile at them, but it hurt, and I hoped they realized how grateful I was to have them around. I think I heard Angie tell me Ben was coming over after school, and I tried to smile again just thinking about it hurt. It was over a week before I recovered enough to talk to my doctor. He started literally from the beginning. I had a concussion, the result of hitting the wooden frame of the garage door when Gilson hit me. I had a dislocated right shoulder and a badly bruised upper right arm. I had 3 and possibly 4 broken ribs. I had severe bruising of my kidneys and even more severe bruising of other internal organs. My testicles were badly swollen, and it was feared that I might lose one or both of them. Finally, I had my spleen removed when it was discovered that it had ruptured. My injuries were the result of a single punch from an enraged Terry Gilson, followed by systematic kicking as I lay unconscious on the ground. What saved me was that Felicia Romano, who had witnessed most of the altercation, screamed bloody murder from her kitchen window, causing Gilson to look up and realize he was being watched. He rushed to his car, backed out of our driveway, and rubber-tired the entire block. Felicia was smart enough to call 911, and that's how I ended up in the hospital. Dilson was identified by Felicia and another neighbor who recognized his license plate number when he sped down our street, nearly hitting a mother pushing a baby stroller. There aren't many white 1964 Ford Galaxy convertibles in our town, and a couple of hours later, Gilson was seen leaving a bar and driving away in an inadequate manner. On top of all the woes, Gilson was arrested for DUI and resisting arrest. He just didn't know when to quit when they threw him in a cell. They matched the assault complaint filed by Mrs. Felicia Romano and my admission to the hospital after questioning Felicia. They charged Gilson with aggravated assault, assault with intent, and criminal trespassing. He was in deep crap, and it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy when he called his father from prison. Knox Gilson didn't answer the phone. I wish I could have been there, but I was unconscious and lying on the operating table, having my spleen removed. 2 days after I started having constant lucid moments, a plainclothes officer came to me and asked me to testify. I told him everything I remembered, which wasn't much of face red with anger and a big fist. He asked what might have prompted the attack, and I told him about Terry's affair with my wife, the divorce, and the lawsuits. He nodded a couple of times and thanked me before leaving. Epilogue. The divorce property division judgment was not too favorable to Sheila. I will be buying her share of our house. They gave her the absolute minimum and no alimony, as well as an emphatic lecture on her contribution to my injuries. Knox fired both Terry and Sheila. She was on the job hunt when our divorce became final. Her name was toxic in some circles, and I doubted if she would ever find a decent job in our town. Ben lives with Sheila, but I understand from Angie that their relationship is not what it used to be. I see Ben every week on weekends. We got a break from the judge. He seems to be getting stronger, but he's not the same kid I remember from better times. Angie is Angie. She's my girl and makes sure I'm on top of things. She manages the house, my diet, and exercise program. If I didn't know better, she could have been my mother. My folks have been a pillar of support and helped us when needed. They have no idea how important that was in the last few weeks. I just didn't need any more pressure. George and Amy, thank goodness, have remained friends. They are deeply disappointed in Sheila, but she is their only child and they feel obliged to support her in her time of need. Having been around is a big plus for them. They are spoiling him in a way, but I do not mind. I just want Ben to get through this and come out of it in one piece. Angie stops by to visit. She and her mother talk to each other again, but I get the impression it's an awkward relationship at best. The lawsuits, of course, will never go to trial. Knox Gibson won't let that happen. According to my lawyer friends, Dave and Lydia will settle for a very large sum, and I'll be secured for years to come. Even after taxes and legal fees, I already know I'll be able to take care of Angie and Ben's college tuition and provide them with a car. At least some good will come out of this whole mess. Physically, I have recovered as much as I can at all. I lost my spleen, but my kidneys, ribs, and shoulder are almost healed. I go to physical therapy 3 times a week and will continue to do so for a while longer. I still have pains that come and go daily. The doctor thinks my testicles are 80% functional, but I haven't had a chance to have them tested yet. I really do not have much enthusiasm for the opposite love right now. When I have the money from the trial, I intend to buy Jimmy and Felicia something special. Jimmy has been there for me when I needed him, and Felicia may have saved my life. Nothing will be too extravagant for these two. What happens next? I ask myself regularly. I'm still reeling from what Sheila did to us, but I suppose in time I'll get over the worst of it. I quit Polar Industries, at least tried to. Larry didn't want to hear about it. Instead, he was giving me an indefinite leave of absence. Someday, I'd have a lot of money, and I was trying to decide what I should do with it. I think I know. Frankly, one of my best customers and an old friend from when I first started in sales wants to retire and sell his building materials business. It's a good business with a well-balanced trade between retail and construction customers. He is part of the Build Right buying group, and that helps him compete with the big stores. Dave Murphy and I are going to meet with old Frank and see if we can make it happen. Dan was first in line to look for weekend and summer jobs when he found out about my plan. It doesn't make any difference. I want to keep him close and make sure he's okay while he gets through the next few years. Adolescence is hard enough as it is. And then there's the broken family. I look at Knox and Terry Gilson and realize that this is what happens when you are not involved or close enough in your children's lives. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened to me and our family. I'll be the first to admit that I took it personally and wanted revenge to the fullest. I still feel the same way. Perhaps if I had only had to deal with Gilson, things would have been different. I guess I can imagine how he might have swayed and charmed someone like Sheila. But when I learned about Morissette and how she blackmailed our daughter into silencing her, all thoughts, compassion, vanished. Dave says Terry will spend 2 to 4 years in prison for assaulting me. We talked about a civil suit as well, but there will be no one to sue. His father disowned him. He has no job, no skills, and no prospects. When he gets out of prison, he will be in his early 50s, and a bleak future awaits him. There is nothing more we can do to hurt him. Amazingly, Knox Gilson came to me while I was in rehab. He apologized for everything that had happened and for his deadbeat son. I accepted his apology as sincere. He was well aware that the emotional damage his son had done to me was accompanied by physical damage.